Liv Morgan drops bombshell, challenges Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania. Raw chaos. Liv Morgan just handed Stephanie Vaquer a WrestleMania challenge that the entire women's division is going to be talking about for the next several weeks. And before you dismiss this as a straightforward championship program announcement that generates the usual amount of hype and then settles into the predictable pattern of premium live event build, I need you to understand something about the specific weight that these two women bring to this challenge, this moment, and this WrestleMania collision that makes it categorically different from anything else happening in WWE's women's division right now. This is not champion meets challenger and they exchange words, and the match is made, and the road to WrestleMania is clearly marked from point A to point B. What Liv Morgan did on Raw was not the start of a linear build. It was the detonation of something that has been building pressure for longer than this week's Raw, longer than the championship change that put Liv in position to make this challenge, and the explosion it created inside that arena was the specific kind of explosion that happens when two things that were always going to collide finally find themselves at the intersection where the collision can no longer be deferred. Because here is what the coverage of Liv Morgan challenging Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania is getting wrong. It is covering this as a championship story, as a WrestleMania main event booking story, as a narrative about two performers whose competitive paths have led them to the biggest possible stage at the biggest possible time of year. All of that is true. None of that is the actual story. The actual story is about two women who represent completely different things, different backgrounds, different journeys to the top of the card, different relationships with the wrestling audience, different styles and philosophies and approaches to what it means to be a top women's performer in WWE in 2026. And the WrestleMania match between them is not simply a contest that will determine who holds the championship at the end of the night. It is a contest that will determine something about what kind of women's division WWE has and what kind of performer the biggest stage on earth rewards when it has to choose. The chaos that erupted on Raw after Liv Morgan's challenge was not the manufactured chaos of a scripted confrontation designed to generate clip-worthy content. It was the specific chaos of something real touching something real in a professional environment and producing a reaction that outpaced every plan for how the segment was supposed to unfold. Stay in this video. The full story is everything. Liv Morgan's decision to challenge Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania is not separate from the circumstances of her championship win. It is inseparable from them. And understanding the challenge requires understanding where Liv Morgan is as champion, not just on paper, not just in terms of the official record, but in terms of the specific narrative position she occupies and the specific pressure that position has been generating since the moment she won the title. The circumstances of Liv Morgan's championship win produced a conversation that did not fully resolve the moment the belt changed hands. That is the reality of a title change that happened in the specific way this one did, with enough questions about timing and creative intent surrounding it that a portion of the audience could not fully commit to the coronation without those questions first being answered. Liv Morgan wearing the championship is real. Liv Morgan's right to that championship was, for some portion of the audience, not fully settled in their minds by the result alone. And Liv Morgan knows this. She has always known this. Because Liv Morgan's entire career has been defined by the experience of having her right to be where she is questioned gently, loudly, overtly, subtly by external voices whose opinions she has spent years doing the work to make irrelevant. This is not a performer who is unfamiliar with the experience of holding something that other people feel entitled to dispute. It is something she has navigated her entire career. The WrestleMania challenge to Stephanie Vaquer is Liv Morgan's answer to the lingering question. Not through a promo designed to address the doubters directly that has never been Liv's most effective register, but through the specific, decisive, maximum stakes action of walking into the most significant women's championship match of the entire year with the title in her hands and demanding that the result, this time, be produced on the biggest stage against the most credible possible opposition in front of the largest possible audience. You cannot dispute a WrestleMania title defense won against Stephanie Vaquer. If Liv Morgan walks out of WrestleMania as champion after defending against Vaquer after surviving the most complete and credible challenge the women's division can currently produce, the conversation about the legitimacy of her reign is over. Definitively. On the record. On the grandest stage. That is what this challenge is actually about. Not just winning WrestleMania. Settling the question once and for all. Let's talk about Stephanie Vaquer specifically, because the specific identity of the person Liv Morgan is challenging is not incidental to the meaning of the challenge. It is central to it. And any analysis of this WrestleMania program that does not start with who Stephanie Vaquer is and what she represents is analysis that is missing the most important ingredient. Stephanie Vaquer is the most technically complete new addition to the WWE women's division in recent years. Full stop. That is not hyperbole deployed in service of the WrestleMania hype cycle. It is the assessment of the people who have been in the ring with her, of the people backstage who evaluate talent with the most experienced and most critical eyes in the business, and of the audience that has watched her work in WWE and in every major women's wrestling environment globally and arrived at the same conclusion independently. What makes Vaquer the perfect opponent for Liv Morgan at WrestleMania is not simply that she is technically excellent. It is that she is technically excellent in a way that creates a specific stylistic and competitive contrast with Liv Morgan that WWE television programming has been building towards since both women became prominent enough in their respective positions to make the collision inevitable. Vaquer brings craft to every match she is in. The kind of craft that rewards the most attentive watching with something new every time, the specific intelligence of in-ring decision-making that operates faster and with more precision than the broadcast can always capture in real time, that reveals itself in slower analysis after the fact as a sustained sequence of the best possible choices being made under competitive pressure. She is not the most physically intimidating woman in the division, though her physical conditioning and her toughness within a match context are absolutely elite. She is the most technically precise. And that precision, brought to a WrestleMania main event against the woman who carries the championship into the night, is exactly the kind of opposition that championship defenses need to feel genuinely weighted. For Liv Morgan, Vaquer represents the most honest competitive examination available in the current women's division. There is no path to a disputed result in a Liv Morgan vs. Stephanie Vaquer WrestleMania match. If Vaquer wins, she is unambiguously better on the night. If Morgan wins, she has defeated the division's most technically complete competitor on the biggest stage. Neither outcome can be asterisked. Neither can be qualified. Both carry the full weight of the moment they are produced in. That finality, that absolute quality of whatever result WrestleMania produces between these two is why this match matters more than any other available configuration for the Women's Championship program. The chaos that the word WrestleMania produced on Raw when Liv Morgan made her challenge is the most important piece of evidence available for understanding just how charged this program actually is. Because the specific form the chaos took, the individuals who got involved, the specific escalations that occurred, the way the segment departed from whatever production plan had been in place before it went on the air tells you that the energy of this WrestleMania program is not being artificially generated. It is genuine. It is present. And it exceeds the containment that weekly television programming can reliably impose on it. The involvement of other women's division performers in the aftermath of Liv's challenge was not simply a factional response or a competitive interruption. It was the women's division's competitive hierarchy reacting to a WrestleMania program that matters enough to produce real reactions from people whose own WrestleMania paths are affected by it. Because a WrestleMania Women's Championship match is not just about the two people in it. It is a statement about which stories the company considers most important to tell on its biggest stage. And every woman in that division who has her own WrestleMania ambitions has a specific, immediate, personal stake in whether the match being announced is the one that closes the door on their path or the one that forces them to find another one. The Raw segment that followed Liv's challenge was the women's division expressing that stake in real time. Not tidily. Not in a way that fit neatly into the production framework that had been planned for that television slot. But authentically. With the specific urgency of people for whom WrestleMania season is not an abstract programming exercise but the moment that the entire year has been built toward. Production went to commercial at a point that suggested the chaos was not entirely within the planned parameters of the segment. Commentary had the specific quality of people doing their best to keep pace with something that was moving faster than the pre-show conversation had prepared them for. And the visual of where things stood when Raw returned to air told you that the attempt to re-establish order had been only partially successful. That partial success is the most honest possible advertisement for what Liv Morgan vs. Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania is going to look like. If the announcement produces this, if the words WrestleMania and these two names together in the same sentence creates this much uncontained energy on Raw, what does the match itself produce? A WrestleMania Women's Championship match between Liv Morgan and Stephanie Vaquer has the ingredients to be the best women's WrestleMania match in years. Possibly the best women's WrestleMania match WWE has ever produced, depending on how the build is handled and how the event itself is constructed. The potential is not in question. The people involved have the ability. The story has the stakes. The audience has the investment. What the build needs to deliver between now and WrestleMania is the specific thing that all of the potential in the world cannot substitute for, the escalation of emotional stakes that makes the audience care about the result, not just because a championship is on the line but because the two women competing for it have become so vivid to them in the preceding weeks that the match carries personal weight. Liv Morgan's side of the build needs to be about proving something. The championship she holds, the challenge she has made, the WrestleMania stage she has claimed as the venue for the definitive answer to every question that has been asked about whether she belongs at this level. All of this needs to be expressed through a version of Liv Morgan that the audience has not fully seen before. A version that has shed whatever remaining uncertainty surrounded the championship win and replaced it with the specific fearlessness of someone who has decided that the only relevant opinion is the one produced by the match result at WrestleMania. Stephanie Vaquer's side of the build needs to be about inevitability. Not arrogance. Vaquer's character operates in a register that is too specific and too carefully earned to be reduced to simple heel arrogance, but inevitability. The sense that the most technically complete performer in the division accepting a WrestleMania challenge for the Women's Championship is not something that needs to be questioned or built toward through doubt and obstacles. It is simply the next correct thing to occur. and the calm certainty of someone who believes that completely, who brings that unshakable professional confidence to every segment of the build, is both the most compelling thing Vaquer can project and the most destabilizing thing she can present to a champion who is still in the process of making her championship feel fully settled. The weeks between now and WrestleMania are the opportunity. Both women have to seize it. And based on what happened on Raw, based on the chaos that the announcement produced, the energy that was visible in every person involved, the capacity to seize it is absolutely present. I want to pull back for a moment because there is a dimension of the Liv Morgan vs Stephanie Vaquer WrestleMania match that exists beyond the individual stories of both performers, and that deserves direct acknowledgement in this video. The state of WWE's women's division in 2026 is a topic that generates passionate, divided conversation within the wrestling community because the quality of the talent available to fill it is extraordinary, while the consistency of how that talent is deployed and developed and given the creative investment it deserves has been, and the people who follow this division closely know this, uneven. When the division has a WrestleMania Women's Championship match between two genuinely elite performers, built around a real competitive story with real emotional stakes, on the biggest stage the industry offers, that is the division operating at the level its talent deserves. And making that happen is not simply a function of good booking decisions. It is a function of a decision-making culture that has chosen to treat the Women's Championship match at WrestleMania as something worthy of the same creative investment that the Men's Championship programs receive. Liv Morgan's challenge to Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania, and the chaos it created on Raw, is evidence that the creative investment is there this year, that the decision has been made to give this program the runway it needs to build into something genuinely significant, that the Women's Championship match at WrestleMania 2026 is being treated as a main event program rather than a supporting act that gets the appropriate amount of screen time in service of a larger structure built around other stories. That decision is worth celebrating, and it is worth holding accountable if the weeks between now and WrestleMania do not honor the promise that Raw's chaos made tonight. Liv Morgan dropped a WrestleMania bombshell and Raw descended into chaos, and the most important Women's Championship program of 2026 is officially underway. I need every take in this comments section immediately. Does Liv Morgan beating Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania settle the championship legitimacy conversation once and for all, or does it depend entirely on how the match itself unfolds? Is Stephanie Vaquer the right opponent to give Liv Morgan the WrestleMania moment her championship reign needs, or is there someone else in the division who makes a more compelling case? And the question that I know is going to divide this comments section cleanly and loudly and without resolution: who wins at WrestleMania, Liv Morgan or Stephanie Vaquer? And what does the result mean for the women's division in the months that follow? Drop every word in the comments. Share this video right now with every wrestling fan who exists in your life, because this WrestleMania program announcement is the one that the women's division conversation needs to be centered on between now and the grandest stage of them all. Subscribe to Wrestling News CC and activate every notification, because the build to Liv Morgan vs Stephanie Vaquer at WrestleMania is going to produce some of the most important weekly television the women's division has generated in years. Liv Morgan dropped the bombshell. Raw descended into chaos. And WrestleMania just found its most anticipated women's championship match. The build starts right now.